Welcome to Shambhu Sessions, a podcast of inspiring conversations with musicians, artists, and visionaries of our time. I'm your host, Shambhu, guitarist and composer. Today, I'm honored to welcome a fellow guitarist and someone I've wanted to meet for a long time, Vin Downes. Vin studied classical guitar performance and music education at William Patterson University. He's a brilliant player and composer, as well as a high school music teacher in Bayonne, New Jersey, where he directs and writes for an acclaimed classical guitar music student ensemble. Vin's classical guitar style was influenced by Windham Hill greats like David Cullen, Will Ackerman, Michael Hedges, and Alex DeGrassi. He's collaborated with Will, Tom Eaton, and others on his recordings, and he's released 9 albums. Vin's music glows with depth, clarity, and heart. I'm excited to chat with the great Vin Downes. Hello, my friend.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to finally meet.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I've really admired your music for your musicality. You're really a consummate musician, and I appreciate that because I'm a guy who studied at Manhattan School of Music and have been studying my whole life. So it's just a pleasure. I kind of want to start with your early days in music. I studied piano at 5. I switched to guitar at 7. When did you first get involved with music and guitar?
I always loved music. My earliest memories are of listening to records with my mother. Maybe I was 4 or 5 years old. I have a very clear memory of sitting on the bedroom floor with our collapsible phonograph, and she didn't have many records, but I remember distinctively John Denver's greatest hits, the Mamas and Papas, and the Beatles, the first Beatles record. And I just remember, even as a little kid, those records did something to me emotionally, but physically too. I had some kind of weird reaction to the music that I was always fascinated with. And I guess, when I was in elementary school, I wanted to play the flute, believe it or not. That was the thing with the school band I was kind of interested in. But for whatever reason, it just never happened. Either my parents couldn't afford the flute or the lessons or whatever. And I guess I was 11 years old. I was visiting a cousin, and she had an old Yamaha acoustic guitar in her closet. And I was kind of intrigued by that. And her boyfriend at the time was a guitar player, and she took me over to his house, and he had this beautiful Martin D45. Which still sticks in my mind why he had that, because he was just sort of like, an amateur, just played every once in a while. Beautiful guitar. And he showed me the chords for Dust in the Wind. And not the finger picking, but just strumming, the C and the A minor chord. And I remember going back to my cousin's house and just hours and hours and hours of just strumming those chord patterns over and over and over again. And then my cousin let me take the guitar home and use that. And then I had to convince my parents to let me take some lessons at the local music shop. So that's where it started. I was about 11 years old. And I already had a real love for music at that time. So it just blossomed from there, I guess.
I was kind of doing a little research on you. You started also playing electric and got into heavy metal and Ozzy and
Oh,
all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. Tell me
Yeah,
about
I'm
that.
hanging out with the kids on the block who were all, 2 or 3 years older than me. I can remember hanging at my friend's house, and they would have AC/DC Back in Black, the first 2 Ozzy records, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, the first Van Halen record, and for some reason I remember the Rolling Stones' Tattoo You. And those records, just the guitar sounds alone, especially the Ozzy records with Randy Rhoads, I was just fascinated with that sound. And I remember that particular friend, his birthday, and his father bought him tickets to go see Ozzy Osbourne for his birthday, and they were going to take me along. And it was the Diary of a Madman tour, so that would have been, I think, 82. So I'm like 10 going on 11 at that point. And Randy Rhoads had tragically passed away in a plane crash. I think it was the week before the concert.
Hmm.
So it was canceled, obviously, but some months later we did go, and Brad Gillis filled in on a guitar. And just seeing a concert like that, that's when he had the whole castle stage set up. And it was just, I mean, it's Ozzy Osbourne, so it was over the top. But being 10 years old at that time was the Brendan Byrne Arena here in New Jersey, just witnessing that, it just something changed in my brain. And I was like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. So after I had that acoustic guitar from my cousin, I had begged my parents to please get me an electric guitar. And that's where I started playing heavy metal. And I did that through middle school. And I had friends who played, and we started our own band. And then through high school, I played in heavy metal bands for the first 2 years of high school. And then once I got into the jazz band at school, I was sort of cultured into listening to other music. And that's where things really changed for me. But yeah, my beginnings are all in heavy metal, and I still have a passion for a lot of that old stuff because a lot of it, still stands up as pretty good music. So it's
Absolutely.
still important to me. In fact, my friend in Kansas brought me to see Iron Maiden a couple of years ago, and I was shocked at how good they were live. And we just got tickets to go see them next year with it's Iron Maiden, Megadeth, and Anthrax. So it's three of the biggest heavy metal thrash bands. So I
Bring
still
some
have
earplugs.
yeah. So I still like that stuff, but that's where I started. So it's still really important to me because that's my roots. That's where I began.
And when did you get kind of come into contact with David Cullen and Windham Hill? Was that at the end of high school?
Yeah, it was probably, I guess, once I got into the jazz band in like junior year, I was listening to jazz and then some classical stuff. And I always read music from day one, from when I was 10 or 11 taking lessons. And I always knew that was important. And I enjoyed learning how to read music and I loved the theory of music. I just enjoyed
Hmm.
that stuff. So when I was in, it was probably junior year, I guess I had a Guitar Player magazine and there was an article about Michael Hedges in there. And I remember reading that article, and the phrase that stuck out to me is he described his music as heavy mental music, I think he said. And I was like, oh, that's close to heavy metal. I should check this guy out. And I didn't know anything about Windham Hill or Michael Hedges. And I went to a local record shop and I bought two cassettes. I bought Hedges Live on the Double Planet and the acoustic guitar Windham Hill sampler. And the first one I listened to was the sampler, and that David Cullen song On the Way was the first track. And as soon as I heard that, my brain exploded. I was just getting into finger style, playing with my fingers, and when I heard that, that just it was a game changer for me. I was like, I have to learn how to do that because there was so much going on. It sounded like an entire orchestra, an entire band in one person's fingers, and
So
I
that
was
kind of brought
really
you from the electric back to the acoustic.
yeah, immediately. That was a game changer. I had acoustic guitars, but I from that moment on, I really focused on the finger style. And at the same time, going into senior year of high school, I knew that I wanted to go to college for music, and I had a great band director, band teacher, David Watson, who I remain close friends with, who really kind of mentored me to get me into college, and I took the classical route. So I was already really focusing on the finger style thing. So the classical music and the Windham Hill stuff really worked hand in hand together. So I was able to really focus on both of those.
So you majored in classical music in college. You
Mhm.
write kind of classical style music for the guitar ensemble.
Right, exactly. I mean, I've always, even from the first days I played guitar, I always wanted to write my own music. I remember not even knowing what I was doing. It's because I was learning how to read music, writing in my little manuscript book. I always was fascinated with the creation of music. I always did that through high school. Even when I played in heavy metal bands, I always wrote original music. So that was very important to me. And then once I was studying classical music, I was studying classical performance and education, but I also took a couple years of composition. That was always important to me. So the two went hand in hand.
Were there any composers on the classical side or even the classical guitar side that really touched you back then?
When I was studying classical guitar, I guess the first 2.5 years, I had a teacher he was terrible. And as an educator myself, I feel okay saying that. I'm not to bash him personally, but I never saw the guy play the guitar. In all the years I studied with him, 2.5 years, he never brought a guitar to a lesson. And that was really strange. So I was kind of really turned off to the classical guitar repertoire just because of the experience I had inside the lesson room. There was always stuff that I really gravitated to. I always loved Renaissance music and early music. I wasn't so much into a lot of the Spanish composers, that Spanish aspect of the classical guitar. And I also like a lot of contemporary music because when I was in college, I got into the new music ensemble where I was playing, it's not really classical guitar. I'm playing George Crumb, I'm playing Lou Harrison, I'm playing this, crazy contemporary 20th century music. Now I have more of appreciation for the entire spectrum of classical guitar repertoire.
One of your songs felt almost medieval,
Mhm.
Machine in the Garden.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's in I mean that influence is there. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of what I didn't purposely go for that, but I was as I was writing it, I was definitely recognizing like, oh, this definitely has a Renaissance sort of
yeah,
dance feel to it.
yeah.
Because that's the music I spend most of my days playing with my students, classical music. So it's hard to get away from that.
When you write, do you write your songs on paper
Yeah,
or do you hear them or do you play them first?
that has changed because when I was doing like the first few records I did with Will, I was sort of in that alternate tuning land where everything is in a different tuning. When I did the alternate tuning stuff, I wasn't writing anything down because it becomes complicated to do that because, Most of the time, you don't even know what notes you're playing because you're just going for the sound, right? You're just chasing some sort of sound or emotion or color or something like that. But after so many years of doing the alternate tuning thing, we go to alternate tunings to get away from doing the same old things in standard tuning. I think that's what most people gravitate to because you find yourself doing the same patterns, the same shapes. And then when you go to alternate tuning, it's a whole new world and you can't do the same things that you did in standard before. But after playing in alternate tunings for a few years, maybe 5, 6 years, really focusing on just alternate tunings where I was using, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 different tunings, I found myself going to the same patterns and the same things within those tunings. So I made a conscious effort to say, well, let me go back to standard. And I really found it difficult to write in standard after spending so many years in this sort of alternate tuning place. But once I went to standard tuning, I started writing everything down for two reasons. I mean, it was, I love writing on paper. I just love the whole, pencil and paper thing. It's just because that connects me to the language of music, to the theory part of it. But also, I forget everything. I found it, I've forgotten more things than I've remembered that I've written. It was a sort of a way of saying, okay, well, no matter what it is, if it's four measures or a complete song, I need to write it down. So now I have journals. I have these manuscript journals, and that has become a daily habit for me since like COVID, where I'm just every day I sit down and in the morning and I force myself to write something. And
On
it does
paper.
on paper, on with the
Hmm.
guitar on paper. And whether it's good, bad, that doesn't matter. Whether it's four measures or 40 measures, that doesn't matter. It's just the act of doing it every single day to sort of build that muscle. For so many years, I always thought you have to wait for the muse or you have to be inspired to write something. And I would always have writer's block. And then I had a conversation with David Crosby years ago, and he told me like, there's no such thing as writer's block. You need to do the work. You need to do it every day. So I started thinking about that, and I said, well, let me see if I can make this a habit. And I've done that for 5 years now or 6 years, and that's really opened the door to be more prolific and writing a lot more. And again, I have journals and journals filled with music. Most of it I don't use, I won't record, but I think doing that eventually every fourth tune might be a real gem. So
It's funny. My approach is I play. I just play, let myself go. I
right,
record everything that I do.
right. Yeah.
If I'm in a period of writing, I'll go up there and just play a little bit. If something comes out, it comes out, it comes out.
Hmm.
4 or 5 weeks later, I'll go through 100, 200 stems,
Right.
and then I'll find the songs that touched me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and thank God for phones because it's our personal recording studio, right? Just
Yeah.
even voice memos. It's just I have my phone is full of them. But and I'm also the same way where everything I write, although I'm writing it on paper, I'm trying not to think theoretically ever. It all starts from improvisation. I just pick the guitar up and I noodle until I find it could be a fragment of a melody, it could be a chord progression, it could be a rhythmic thing. Once I find something, then the writing starts, and it's always
Got you.
following my ear or my heart. It's not following the theory. And because Will called me out on that several times where, I'd come to the studio with the song and I'd be playing the song and he would stop me and go, wait a minute, that little part right there, you thought about that. You thought about that. You used music theory there. I could tell. And I was like, wow, you're right. I did. So that comes across. I don't want it to be like this guy's thinking about his music. He's thinking about a certain chord progression or this voice goes this way, this voice goes that way. It's following your ear. And that's through improvisation.
Let's jump into your experience with Will. So, the first album you did with him was Unlike the Stars, right?
Correct. Yeah.
How did that kind of change your life, and what did you learn about studio production and the recording process working with Will and Tom?
It completely changed my life. And just the circumstances of that even happening were kind of bizarre. Um, this is maybe 2000 and
13.
right. But before that, maybe I had two albums out that I recorded locally, and they're very different from everything I've done since Will. They were more folky, bluesy kind of stuff. And 2011, maybe, I discovered that David Cullen, he lived in Pennsylvania and he was only a car ride away. So I reached out to him and asked him if he was teaching lessons because I knew he taught at a couple of universities out there.
Hmm.
And so I went out to David's house and I took a lesson with him. And he gave me enough information to practice for a lifetime or two. And then I didn't go back. And about a year later, I got an email from Will out of the blue. And I had never met Will. Well, that's not true. I met him at a concert, 5 seconds after a concert. So I got an email from Will and it said, I like your music. I think Imaginary Roads might be a good fit. Maybe you can come up here and we can meet and yada yada. And I said to my wife, I just got a spam email from Will Ackerman's studio. It can't be Will. It must be some sort of just, spam email or something. So I was going to delete it because I didn't think it was real. And Marie had said, no, you need to answer that email. Even if it is fake, you need to answer the email. And I answered it, and Will must have been on his computer because he emailed me immediately. And I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to Will Ackerman. I can't believe this. So that led to me going up there in 2012, I believe, to meet him and Tom at the studio, which Will later told me was a job interview. He was interviewing me to see if he wanted to work with me. And luckily we clicked. And I went up there to record Unlike the Stars. I was there for a week. We did the 4 sessions, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And I've told both of them, and I've told them several times that I learned more in that week with the two of them about how to play music than I did in 4 years of university. It was just a masterclass. I learned so much that week. And the most important thing was I came out of that session with such confidence, and they taught me how to get in touch with my own voice. Will always says, and I'm sure you've heard him say, like, your music has to be true.
Hmm.
And like I didn't understand that at first, but later I knew what he meant. It's you have to be honest with yourself and just write from the heart. And that's what they taught me
Yeah.
to do, to trust that voice. It was amazing. It was life-changing. That changed my life, that recording session, because it was shortly
Yeah.
after that I was playing with Will and touring with him. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I had a similar experience. I started a little earlier than you. I met
Mm,
him in 2009 through Jeff Oster,
right.
and then we started recording together in 2010.
Yeah.
And I did my second album around 2013.
Right.
He's completely changed my life and dramatically, including helping both of us find a pathway to building an audience and finding listeners for our music.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
just being around him, it's so many lessons that have nothing to do with music that I learned from him. He's full of wisdom and experience, and he's just an interesting human being and kind. Just one of the kindest
very.
people you ever meet.
His impact on music is very profound when you go back and listen to all the original Windham Hill artists who are insanely great.
Right.
And then you listen to the kind of post Windham Hill artists who he produced afterwards. Just his influence is really deep and entrenched in many artists, and it'll influence people to come. Hey, I want to jump into your relationship with David Crosby. So he
Hmm.
became a fan of your music, you became friends. I remember when I heard his album Cross in 2014, I went,
Hmm.
holy crap. This thing
Right.
is so good. It's so fresh. It's so tasty. It's so authentic. It's so him. I was blown away by that. How did you
Yeah.
guys meet? How did his interest in music affect you? And what are your takeaways from his life and his music?
Yeah, that's another bizarre story. First of all, my wife and I have been Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Crosby, Nash, fans of all of them in every combination since we met in college. We didn't miss a Crosby, Stills, and Nash concert from maybe 92 until they stopped touring together. And we've seen them in every combination. They are just huge for us. He was infamous for being on Twitter, and he just loved Twitter. And I had followed him and just I know. I was writing When the Sea Lets Go. I was writing songs for that album, and I had posted a snippet of a new piece of music. I was kind of into at that time writing things and putting out little snippets and see, how it landed with people. And he just happened to catch one of those videos on Twitter, and he said, "Hey, I really like this. Could you send me more?"
Hmm.
And at that point, I didn't have any more because it was just like 30 seconds of a new song. So, I said to Marie, once he retweeted that, I was like, oh my God, David Crosby just says he likes the song and he wants to hear more of it. I have to finish the song now. So I
Great
stayed up.
song, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It was Streets of Sunday. That was the song, actually, which is on that
Uh,
album.
yeah,
So I stayed up that night and I finished the song and I recorded a video and I sent it to him. I said, "Hey, I finished the song last night." And he was like, "This is great. I never heard of you. Can I hear more of your music?" So I sent him downloads to all of my albums and we just started talking on Twitter for maybe 6 months or so. And he was about to start a new tour and it was on a West Coast tour and he was only on the West Coast. And I just tweeted out to him, "Hey, David, have a great tour. Wish we could be out there to see a show." And he tweeted back, he said, pick a show and you have tickets and backstage passes and we can meet. So I said to Marie, I said, well, probably can't afford it right now, but we have to fly to California because David
Hmm.
Crosby has invited us to a show. And that's kind of how it started. We flew out there, we met him. And the funniest part is it was at the Freight and Salvage in Berkeley.
Mm.
I walk in the front doors, and who's standing there? Jeff Oster. I'm like, I know this guy. So, Jeff was at the show and he was backstage too. So it was kind of nice to be back there because I was so nervous. But Jeff was there and was, kind of calmed me down a little bit. So that's how we met. And then we stayed in touch and we would email each other and phone calls. And then I was touring with Four Guitars. We were in California. I think we were in Thousand Oaks. And Crosby said, well, let's meet up. I'll take you out to lunch. And we met in Santa Barbara and he took us out for tacos. And then he said, well,
Mm.
come back to the house. So Marie and I followed him back to his house and we spent the entire day just hanging out and playing guitars. And it was amazing. It was just amazing. He
Well,
was so kind and so generous.
what's your kind of takeaway from his music and his life? You learned lessons from Will. Did you pick up anything from him?
He was all about, he kept saying, I want to teach you how to write songs. I want to teach you how to write songs. And I'm like, well, I don't sing and I don't write lyrics. He knew that. He was all about telling a story through the music. And,
Mm.
everything that he listened to as growing up, all the jazz that influenced his music and the folk music and classical music, those are the same things I was listening to. So I was really drawn to his sense of harmony, his sense of melody, sense of phrasing. And we would talk about that. He would teach me new tunings or he'd teach me some chord voicings to try out. And we would Zoom together and he would pull his guitar out and he would show me some things to work on. Everything about his music always spoke to me. The color in it and the emotion in it and just everything about it. It was another masterclass, just like with Will and Tom. He taught me how to connect with my own voice more.
Love that.
Yeah.
And so tell me, how many albums have you released and do you have any favorites?
I have my 10th album coming out next year, which is a really special one because it's Tom and I together. We've decided to finally put a duo album out. So I'm really excited about that. And that's completely different because it's all electric guitar too.
Really?
We recorded that in the summer. I did my tracks up in the summer and then in the process, a lot of it was improvised in the studio and we were working together and he was laying down some synth beds and some percussion stuff and then playing bass and I said, we should really make this a duo album because we're writing this together and playing it together. So that's what we're doing. And he's finishing up some tracks now. That should be out early next year. So that'll be my 10th album. For the first two I recorded were before I kind of had my own voice. I was kind of mimicking players I was listening to at the time. It's more bluesy and folky. And then the stuff I did with Will and Tom at Imaginary Road Studios is mostly my sort of alternate tuning period. And then everything post that I've done with Tom, who, I mean, I can't say enough about Tom Eaton. I can't imagine making music with anybody else on this planet other than Tom, because we just sort of click so well. I think we share a lot of the same musicality, and um, I just love working with Tom. I think he's the best person to work with, so I can bring out the best part of my own music, my own voice. So everything I've done with Tom has sort of been back to standard tuning. I guess the last album is probably my favorite right now. Once I record something, I kind of like don't listen to it again. I just go on to the next project. But I was really proud of City Lights Hides the Stars. I think it was my
I
first.
love that album.
I appreciate it.
It's an
Thank
EP.
you.
I really love it. The songs are great. It's just very creative. It's very deep.
Thanks. Yeah. And it's different because, it's my first record on nylon string, which is the guitar I play every day in school. So I was like, I really should be playing this and writing on this and recording on this instrument. And then I love the idea of short pieces. Like this is something I've been obsessed with the last few years of trying to write short pieces of music under a couple minutes, maybe two and a half at the most, and try to tell a complete story within that time. So there has to be the same arc you would have in a longer piece of music, but concise. And it's very challenging to do. And I think that album really worked. I think all of those pieces were very cohesive as a complete album and told a story from start to finish. And then again, that's another idea I stole from Tom Eaton because his Snapshots album, where it's I think the 25 short piano pieces, is one of my all-time favorite records. I think it's one of the most perfectly composed collections of compositions out there. It's such a brilliant album. So that's where I kind of got that idea from.
And when you write, when you play, are you trying to get listeners to feel anything or to hear anything special, or is it just you're just putting out what you feel? Is there any intention with regard
Yeah,
to audiences?
yeah, I've had this conversation with other people. They always ask me, well, Are you trying to write for this niche or
Yeah.
I always say that I'm listener number one. I'm writing for me. I have to enjoy it. And once I'm done with it, the whole process of starting from improvisation to composing to rehearsing to recording, I love that process. I mean, I absolutely live for that process. And once that's done, that's all for me. That's all for my ears and for my heart and what I'm feeling with the music. Once it's released, then it belongs to whoever listens to it. So I'm not really writing specifically for listeners, for a specific audience, for specific playlists, or I think there's too much of that nowadays. I think that need to be true to yourself. You're your first listener. You're writing for your own heart. And then it's going to touch some people for whatever reasons, whether they just love it, they love your compositions, or they love it because it helps them to go to sleep at night, or whatever the reason is, that's fine. But I'm already onto the next project at that point. So I think it's important to write for yourself first and
Hmm.
foremost.
Love that. And you've collaborated with a couple of great people. I really love Sunrise Mountain with Dennis Turbide.
Yeah, yeah.
And your work with Lance Allen felt
Mhm.
like two friends talking. Tell me about those collaborations.
Yeah, Dennis, we've never actually met, but we connected, I guess, via YouTube way back. Like this is maybe back on MySpace. It was that long ago. We collaborated years ago on a piece before there was even like really good recording software to do it with. And then we stayed in touch every once in a while, just reaching out, checking, hey, how's your family? How are things? And then once he was recording a lot and really putting out a lot of singles, he sent me some ideas, and which I loved because I always loved Dennis's playing. It's just very authentic. He's sort of got that sort of bluesy, folky root stuff that I started with that I love. And he sent me some pieces, and I was more than happy to collaborate with him. And again, if somebody sends me things, first of all, I have to really feel like I can contribute to the piece of music. If I feel like I'm just adding something that's just adding it to add it, I really won't do it. But everything that Dennis sent me, I mean, I heard something that I think would help the piece of music or work well with what he's playing. And the same thing with Lance. Lance, I've known for a long time too, via the internet. And he sent me that one tune that right away a melody popped out. And I thought, well, this will work. This will definitely work. So those were fun. And again, I really don't have recording skills at home. I'm very like non-tech here, so I could just ship them a track and they could just fix it and mix it and master it. So that was fun. I love collaborating with people, and I've had the opportunity to record with some other people. Masako was one, which
I
was,
love her.
oh my God, she's genius, just genius, and what a sweet person. So it's been a pleasure I played on a couple tracks for her. So I love doing that. I mean, that's always fun. Always fun.
I love Streetlight Glow. It felt a little bit like Pat Metheny,
Yeah. Who is
in
huge
a
for me.
classical rapper.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Temporary Waltz,
Mhm.
very inventive and joyful.
Yeah, yeah. When I'm in standard tuning with tunes like that, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to capture the sound of an alternate tune guitar, those voicings, those open voicings. I'm trying to get that same sound in standard by using a lot of campanella playing, using open strings with fretted notes to get those ringing out harmonies. So I'm glad that comes across though, especially with Pat
Yeah,
Metheny because he's one of my favorite players.
me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
love Pat. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's just jump into music education. It's really rare to find music programs in schools these days, yet you're leading a classical guitar ensemble. Tell me why music education is important for students.
Guitar programs are becoming a little bit more popular across the country. You're not going to find them in every school, that's for sure. But here in New Jersey, there's a handful of them, and they're all very good programs. So, I taught, I guess, 17 years doing general music, which is little kids, pre-K to eighth grade, general music and choir. I've done high school choir, I've done middle school band, I've done everything. And the entire time, I always asked my supervisors if I could start a classical guitar program at the high school level. It was years of asking and getting all kinds of excuses why we can't do it. I started one in my elementary school, and then eventually we had a turnover of supervisor. And I asked the new supervisor if he'd be interested in that, and he gave me the go-ahead for that. The guitar program is a no-brainer for a high school program because what high school kid would not want to learn how to play the guitar? It's a no-brainer. It's a great way of getting so many students who ordinarily would not be a part of a music program or an arts program into an ensemble program where they're actually learning and creating and performing. I think it's an easy sell to any music department in a high school anywhere because I have anywhere between 75 to 100 kids in the program a year.
Wow.
And that's, I'll have 3 or 4 Guitar One classes, which is a complete introduction. The kids don't even have to have ever picked a guitar up ever in their life. And they learn how to read music. And we're playing classical, so we're sitting with the footstools and playing with their fingers. And even when I tell them the first day, they think they're coming into a rock guitar class because nobody ever reads the class description. And I'm like, no, we're going to kind of sit funny. We're going to use our fingers, no picks, no Slayer, no Taylor Swift, and they're down with it. And then, of course, throughout the year, I'll teach them how to play all kinds of stuff with pick and heavy metal songs, whatever they want to learn, we learn. But it starts with classical technique and reading music. So I'll have 3 or 4 Guitar One classes, then I'll have a Guitar Two class, and then my levels 3 and 4 are combined into one class. So it's a 4-tier program. And then the advanced kids, Guitar Two, and then Guitar Three, Four, they're their own separate performance ensembles, and then I'll combine them all for an ensemble. And then I have an honors program where kids have to audition, and that could be anywhere from a trio up to a sextet or something like that. We'll give numerous recitals throughout the year, and it's mostly classical music. We'll do some jazz, we'll do some blues, we'll do some maybe Beatles songs arranged for ensemble. So we do a lot of everything. I haven't had a year yet where the enrollment has dipped because, again, guitar, high school kids, it's a perfect match. So I think it's really important because you're bringing so many more kids into the arts that ordinarily would not take an arts class. And I think that's vitally important.
And how much of the repertoire are you creating
Well,
yourself?
after doing this is like year 13 of the program, I guess. So after the first almost 10 years, I've exhausted all of the, at least the free resources out there, because there's tons of free resources. Or, I've bought lots of music myself as well. But after doing the same music year after year, I'm like, well, I need new music. Why don't I just write it? So I've been writing music for everything from the Guitar One classes, which is just simple stuff, up to the honors ensemble. I've been writing for the New Jersey All-State Ensemble. I started that last year. They commissioned another piece for the 2026 ensemble, so I just finished that, which is good for me too. It's good for them because they're getting tons of different music to play, but it's good for me because I'm building my own library of my own work that eventually I'll put into books and I'll publish you know, and
You
maybe come up
published a
with.
lot of stuff.
Yeah, through Guitar Chamber Music Press, which is a great publishing company that it's all guitar music, and it's mostly classical, but there's some jazz stuff there as well, and a great group of composers and guitarists are part of that. So it's been wonderful, and they really put out some nice scores. I mean, it's really well printed. It's scores and parts. It's wonderful.
You're like the 21st century Mel Bay.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good gig.
It
I
is a
for
good gig.
years I was like, I just want to get something published and really get into that world. And luckily I met some people who pointed me in the right direction, and I'm doing that now. So once I retire from teaching, that's going to be one of my focuses is just writing music for school ensembles all the way up through collegiate ensembles, and professional ensembles, obviously. But yeah, it's been great. And that's fun. That's my favorite part of music. I love the guitar, but I love composing. That's my favorite part of all of this. Even with my own music, I remember having this conversation with Trevor Gordon Hall. He feels the same way. It's like when you start playing the guitar, one of our first goals is I want the listener to forget that they're listening to a guitar. Forget the guitar. Focus on the music that happens to be coming out of a guitar, but it's about the music. And that's why I love the composition part of this so much. It's my favorite part.
Yeah, he's another great player.
Yeah. And again, what a human being. Just a beautiful human being. What a nice guy.
Looking back over your journey, it's been a great journey. What are you most grateful for?
The support from my family, first of all. My wife and son have been very supportive of me doing all this because, sometimes when you get into composing and performing, or when you're playing live shows, you're not home, or you might be home, but you're not really there. Or you're sort of checked out mentally because you're focused on what you're doing. And they've always been very supportive of that. But also for the opportunities to meet the people I've met. And I don't know how that happened for the most part because I never really went out of the way to, try to hunt somebody down to get into their circle. It just kind of happened. So meeting, Will and Tom, who I again with Tom doesn't get the credit I think he deserves a lot. He is a genius. Tom Eaton is just an absolute genius at what he does. And I'm so lucky to have such a strong connection with Tom and to get to work with him and make music with him. So Will, Tom, I mean, David Crosby, it's just crazy. I've met a lot of my favorite players through my own music. I don't know how, but some of these my favorite players would hear my music and I'd start a friendship with them, which is, that's great. And just to meet those people and they're good people. That's the important part. Will Ackerman and Tom and all these, they're just good human beings. And I learn a lot more from them. It's not just about music, it's just about life in general. So it's the opportunity to be surrounded with such good people. That's what I'm really grateful for.
Love that. And so what's coming up for you? You said you have a 10th album
Yeah,
in
it's
development.
almost done, sort of. Again, it's me and Tom together. It's a duo album. I'm playing all electric guitar on it. I haven't done that since the Seven Conversations album with Tom and Jeff. That album was completely improvised. This new album is sort of improvised and composed in the studio where we were kind of just nothing was really prepared. We just kind of wrote the entire thing in the studio. And again, it's both of us together. So there's going to be mostly ensemble pieces with the two of us playing multiple instruments. And we're also going to have solos each, like some piano solos, some guitar solos. So I'm really excited for this album because it's very different from everything I've done so far. And
Exciting.
yeah, and again, it's getting to work with Tom Eaton and just create in the moment with him. So that should be out early next year, maybe February, March or something like that.
I've started to move from heavy acoustic stuff into this electric ambient.
Right.
I put out the first song with a young guitar player from Pennsylvania named Leo Steinried.
I've heard those and it's amazing.
And
Beautiful.
Sirius picked up the first one after 10 days. And I went, oh my God, I guess
Yeah.
that's going to work.
I'm on to something. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And,
Yep.
and they just picked up another song of mine, Visions, which is also electric ambient.
It's great.
You kind of have to try new things, I think.
Yeah. I was
But
very hesitant to do the electric guitar thing. Jeff and Tom were after me for a long time to do that because we had done a one-off years ago just on the fly. I had a residency in New Jersey at a place called 1867 Sanctuary, and I had 5 or 6 gigs. And I think Jeff and Tom, we were in town for the Flow concert at Carnegie, and Jeff was like, "Well, you have a residency, let's play a gig together." And I was like, "We don't have any music." Don't worry
he
about it.
said, who needs music?
Right. We don't need that. I'm like, okay. I mean, I can improvise, but I also have this classical music brain where everything has to be like, I need form, I need structure. And he's like, eh. So we did it and it was kind of cool. And then we did a couple more gigs and then we wound up recording that album. It was like pulling teeth with me because the ambient thing is so not my world that it was
I
hard.
agree.
It
I'm
was
in the
hard
same
to not
place.
play. It was hard to play less. They would tell me play less notes. I'm like, but just hold that note forever. Just let it go. Okay, where's it going? My brain is like, it's got it. Where am I going with this? And I was like, okay, I get it. I get it. So this thing with Tom, it's not really ambient, but it's kind of ambient, but it has more structure in a way. So it's improvised but composed after the improvisation part. So my brain is happy because I got this kind of floaty stuff, but it's also got some structure to it. But yeah, I mean that stuff is beautiful, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's a
Right.
different headspace. It's a different headspace.
Right on. Is there anything I haven't covered that you'd like to express?
I don't think so. But I
Yeah.
have to tell you that the last 2 nights I was listening to your last two releases, and I absolutely love what you do. The whole because you have the
Thank you.
two guitars, you have this beautiful like choral structure underneath, and then you're just playing lead on top of stuff, and I just love that. Like I want to do more of that kind of stuff. That's so beautiful. Been a
Thank
big
you.
fan for a long time, so I'm glad we
Oh,
finally had a chance to meet and
well,
talk.
well, we should do something one day.
Yes, I think that's the next thing we have to do.
Love
Meet in
that. I'd love
person
that.
and then play some guitars.
We'll do that. We'll do that. We'll do that. Like I say, I'm a huge fan of yours, and you just have such a bright future. You're kind of only at the beginning, too, I think, in a
I
lot of ways.
appreciate it. My goal now is just to keep just write music. I'm not really playing live anymore. I'm just focusing on writing as much music as I possibly can. I figure we have a very short time on this planet. When I leave here, I'd like to have a little body of work that says, I was here, this is what I felt, this is what I created. Whatever happens to it after that, I won't worry about it. I won't be here. But while I'm here, I just want to create as much as possible.
Well, you're creating a giant legacy, and it's just going to grow larger. I think you're in the right place at the right time, and just keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it very, very much. I truly do.
Yeah. So, man, I'm so grateful we had a chance to chat today. My thanks to Vin Downes for
Thank
joining me
you.
today. And you can learn more about Vin Downes and his music at vindownes.com. And I'll put a link in the podcast description. And if this episode moved you, please like, follow, and share Shambhu Sessions wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Shambhu, and until the next time, stay open, stay inspired, and keep listening.
Thanks, brother.
We did it.
Cool. That was fun.